Hi everyone and welcome to new episode of Pop Up after a week break. I hope everyone has been doing well and I'm so excited to say that I have Ocean Leclair with me today. Hello, how's your day been?
Hi, it's been amazing. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I'm so excited to talk about your new EP and your musical journey. And I hope people will maybe join your fandom, or maybe it will inspire other aspiring artists that want to do this. So maybe we can start with, how did your musical journey start?
I was living in New York, going to drama school actually, and I kind of realized that I hated it. So I bought a guitar one night, I think it was Halloween, and I just started writing songs, not really with much expectation. I usually just sat in like a dark bathroom because the reverb was so nice, and then I just start writing songs about like spirits and and sorts of things. And yeah, I don't know, that turned into kind of an addiction, and I used to just skip class and write songs. And um eventually I played one of my own tracks at my housemate's, she was having like a house party or something, and everyone was really, I don't know, like just people were saying that I was really good, and I think I really needed to hear that. And then I just decided that maybe that was my thing. I played one open mic at Pete's Candy Shop in Brooklyn. And then I moved to Berlin and just started doing tons of open mics and playing shows and playing on the streets. Um, yeah, that the rest is history.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you mentioned open mics because I am not a singer, but I once played on my piano on an open mic, and then I went to do a slam poetry, which is something I've never done before. This was like one of the first, well, first I had like a workshop, and then I went and did that. And it's such a good way to start something because you kind of find out how the people and the audience will respond to you and how they will like it, so you get like real life response. So that's very, very interesting. And um maybe you can share maybe something from the open mics, like, do you have someone that like approached you after and said that you should do it like for real, like professionally?
I think at that point I'd already decided. So when I played that gig at Pete's Candy Shop, I I sort of remember everything blurring and people patting me on the shoulders when I came off stage, and it was so clear to me that this was what I was supposed to be doing. So I was just like, this is it. Like, I'm just gonna start doing this. And at the open mics, yeah, it was very sceney. Like, there's a really beautiful. I don't know if it's still like that, but when I was doing it, there was a really beautiful sort of singer songwriter scene where everyone knew each other and would go to each other's shows. And almost every musician playing at these open mics also had their own night at a different bar. Um, and it was really nice. Like, there was a real sense of community around it. Really not at all sort of in an industry way, like in very much a sort of we're here for the music way. Um, and I'm so grateful for that because I think I got really confident, and good at playing live. I think I don't really get nervous. And I think I attribute that to like all my years of playing sometimes to rooms of like a couple of people, you know?
That's amazing. When did you know that you want to release your debut song, and how was it for you? Like, how was the process? How was the release? How did people approach it?
Um, I actually had a different project prior to this. Um, and it was quite tricky figuring out how to actually do it. I wish, well, at the time there wasn't much sort of information about it, or I wasn't, to me, releasing on Spotify was like a super abstract concept. Like I didn't know how to approach it. I was posting a lot of music on YouTube, on SoundCloud, and just, like I was sort of, I didn't know that you could reach out to producers and make a song and distribute it yourself. So I gave a lot of my agency away with my first project. I had sort of no control over where that was floating around, and I think I also felt like I felt really lucky that people would work with me, and record with me. So I sort of let people do whatever they sort of felt like doing, and didn't really um, put my foot down and sort of approach it from a place of no, like I can do this. Like being an indie musician, like now in 2025 is so much easier. Than I think my first song came out in 2019. Even in those 5 years, I just feel like a lot has changed and it's become a lot more accessible. Um, But yeah, I think the barrier of entry for me at the time was really hard. Like I wish someone could have told me that it's actually pretty easy to just put music out.
And maybe why do you think that it changed over the years? Obviously, the maybe like the technical things got better and stuff, but do you think maybe like other things around influence the way people feel more comfortable, or is it that it's better to release a song now?
Um, I think just because there's a lot of small artists that are making a career from, like one TikTok video that they posted, or I remember when I was living in Berlin and busking and stuff, that Alice Phoebe Lou used to float around. And she sort of, I think, got signed off of making street music. Um, and I remember, just seeing that example was so inspiring because I was like, okay, so it's not like you have to sit in your room and wait for a record label to reach out to you. Like that's what I always thought. I always thought that maybe one day some like record executive, sort of suited older man, would come to my show and be like, "Oh my God, I love what you're doing. Is a record deal." That's not how it works, and I think that's great that that's not how it works, because we can actually do so much without having to sign anything or sacrifice our freedom, and there are a lot of different ways of making a career as a musician. So I think it's sort of because we've seen examples of people doing it, that inspires us. I think that's sort of with everything. Like we just have to see someone do it and then we know that we can as well. Unless you can be that pioneer.
That was so beautifully said. Thank you for saying that. Um, yeah, definitely. I feel like myself that a lot of people feel more comfortable and inspired by other people, and it's beautiful that a community like that can be created for other artists to grow without label telling them or giving them worth. So definitely.
Yeah.
Um, how do you approach songwriting? Do lyrics or melodies come first?
It's kind of it comes at the same time. I actually sometimes, I mean, when I write by myself, it's like me and my guitar. I play some chords, I write something over it. But when I'm in the studio, I think I approach things from a much broader perspective. Like I kind of think of images first, images and visuals, and the world that I want to create, because in the studio you have so much more sort of like sonic palettes accessible to you, so you can actually create like really beautiful soundscapes. And the way I approach that sometimes is by even just picturing a single word or a title or a scene I've seen or a movie or um yeah, so it usually just kind of all appears in front of me and I just, yeah, put it down on paper.
Wow, that's so interesting. Nobody ever like said that here before, and I've been doing it for I don't know how long, but that's great, because you don't only like write words, but you see them like becoming alive, and that's a great quality to have because then you can put it in the cover art as well. but I
Yeah.
will ask about it later because I definitely want to talk about some cover arts. I love them. Um, what role does your personal life play in shaping your music? Do you feel like sometimes you're maybe too vulnerable in your songs?
I mean, I never feel like that because I don't really have any sort of sense of privacy. Um, I I sell journal pages at my shows, and I don't really read them before. Like they're just from my personal journals that I've kept over the years. And I just rip them out and give them to the person, you know? Um, and a lot of people have told me that they find that so crazy and so brave and they could never do that. And my songs are sort of just as vulnerable and just as open. Like anything I say in my journal, I would have said in a song, and vice versa. So it's kind of like that. Like I don't, everything is sort of an open book. And I think that's the way up until now that I've approached writing, just because writing started as my own therapy and my own, yeah, like to me, my songs are like journal entries. So, um, yeah, I wouldn't know any different.
I am joining these people, and I will say that you're very brave for doing that. Because when I'm thinking about my journal, first of all, I don't think people will like get it because sometimes I feel like I write nonsense just for myself, you know. But yeah, that's definitely interesting. Well, I hope to be at one of your shows very soon. I would love to experience that, honestly.
I hope so
And
too.
how have your travels influenced your sound and songwriting?
Um, I would say specifically my travels to North America have influenced me a lot. Like I think you can tell in my music that I'm sort of obsessed with Americana. I grew up watching like old Hollywood movies, like most people. And growing up in Europe, that was always sort of this like crazy world. And the moment I landed in New York, I was like, it's actually just like the movies, you know? And I sort of love that commitment to drama. And I don't know, maybe I romanticize it because I haven't grown up there. But specifically this sort of old Hollywood nostalgia I find really inspiring. Being in LA for ages was, yeah, it's just like another world. I traveled to Hawaii and I was sleeping in a car for a couple of weeks. I feel like I had this sort of spiritual awakening sleeping on the beach and just eating mangoes off trees and stuff. And then I also lived in Montreal for 6 months, which sort of deeply was quite like it almost felt like being in a monastery, like a sort of pilgrimage. Um, and connecting to the people that have lived in all of these places. Like everyone I adore is from or spent like a significant amount of time in New York. Um, and I think more than anything, I try to sort of chase the ghosts of the people that I admire and the people I grew up like aspiring to be like.
Yeah, well, as a girl from Europe, I definitely do see the like I romanticize that as well. And I've never been yet, but I will be going in the summer. And yeah,
Really?
it's just something that can inspire you a lot. And I feel like because I don't know many songwriters who like traveled a lot, and when I was like doing my research, I saw that you were at a lot of places. Do you have like one place that was like so inspiring that you had to write a song about?
Well, I do have a song called California. And I do have a song called Montreal. And I've written a lot of songs about New York, so probably those places.
Your music has been described as dream pop. How do you define your style?
I've started describing my music as retro pop because I think when I think of dream pop, I just think of something else. I think of quite sort of wavy, dreamy music with very little percussion and very little change. I think of something that's sort of cloudy and whimsical. And although my songs are whimsical, I think they're a lot more rooted in my inspirations and references, which are all from the past. I was working with a producer from LA, and he said that I was the only artist he was working with who wasn't listing any modern artists. Um, I mean, I find it sort of weird getting inspiration from artists that are still releasing music and are of this time. I find it much more interesting to work with different decades um, and draw from things that aren't music, like movies or movie soundtracks or something I heard in an art installation or someone talking on the street. But I'm such a nostalgic person, especially the 60s and 70s are so just like unfathomably beautiful. Like I wish I could just, anytime I watch a movie from the 60s, I just want to drop myself in it. So yeah, I've started calling it retro pop.
Yeah, I saw your Instagram, and like your like whole vibe is so retro and vintage, and I love it honestly. I don't think I've approached many artists that go with like this way. And that's so interesting that you said that you find it like weird talking, inspiration from a live artist, because when I really think about it, like I think we created that sort of trend where people, say that I'm similar to this and this and this
Mm.
artist, but I also think it's beautiful that we can be our own people, and you definitely are different from other artists, and I just love it so much. When I listened to the new EP, I was blown away, and I have so many questions as well. Where were you always feeling like this was your vibe, or did you watch something or listen to something and that awakened in you?
Um, I sort of believe that our inspirations come through subconsciously, which is why I'm very careful with what I consume, like what TV, what movies, what musicians, what books I read, how I spend my time, because unless I approach something with quite a cutthroat attitude where I'm like, okay, right, I want to make something that conjures up this and this and this, which I wasn't really doing with these last three EPs. Um, it just kind of flows, and I always give my collaborators quite a lot of um, space to be creative. I want people to be excited when they work with me, and I'm also of the opinion that when you allow room and you're not super rigid about your sound, something really interesting could come out that wouldn't otherwise have come out. But I'm approaching music a bit differently after this third EP. Um, in terms of this specific one, I think it's quite similar to the first EP because they were written around the same time. Um, if anything, the second EP was a little bit more stripped back and a bit more about the lyrics, just because I felt like they were the most important thing about it. But yeah, I think it's a bit darker. I think this EP is a lot darker than the first one.
You've collaborated with other artists in the past. Do you want any features or partnerships to create in the future with our people? And how does one collaboration happen? Like, how do you choose that, or how do people choose you? Like, how do you approach it in general?
The reason I've sort of started calling my music retro pop is because I've noticed that there's a lot of really amazing musicians, mainly female, that are making music that's sort of reminiscent of that time, especially smaller artists that are just up and coming. I mean, the big one is obviously Lana Del Rey, and I sometimes get comments that my music sounds like hers, which I'm sure I take a lot of inspiration from her, especially like her early stuff and unreleased music. Like I grew up with that just as much as I grew up with Florence and the Machine and Birdie, like obviously that can be found in my music, but I feel like there's sort of a scene of musicians that are drawing from something a bit more nostalgic. And I I found people within that scene, whose music I love that I would love to work with. I'd love to put on shows with. I'd love to work on songs with, and that's kind of what I did um, with Honey Gentry when we did Sirens of Saint Tropez, because I felt like we're in the same scene, and I really miss that feeling of scene. Like it's something we don't really see as much with social media. It was something that happened in third spaces and in the real world and open mics and shows and parties and stuff. And I think, yeah, I want to bring that back a little bit. And I definitely want to collaborate with more artists to create a sense of that.
Yeah, I'm so also glad you mentioned Lana because obviously, whenever people hear a music like that, they obviously like think of her because she was like one of the first people to kind of really break through. But also, I do not only see other people in your music, but I see something completely different than other people did with the production and the lyrics as well. So I'm very excited what you're gonna do next because it's really, really great. And I never thought, because personally for me I love Lana, but it's not something I usually listen to. I
Mm.
just need to be in the mood for it. But with your music, and I don't want to sound biased and I don't want to be like, oh, because I have you on my podcast, but seriously, I can turn on your music whenever I feel sad or happy or whatever, so it's really great music.
That means a lot. Thank you.
How do you balance vulnerability with creativity in your lyrics?
I think the sort of a lot of the songs, especially from this EP, were written on guitar first. And that's something I do by myself in my room. And it's just my voice, my guitar, and something I'm trying to organize in my head. So it couldn't be more vulnerable. And then when I take into the studio, that to me is when the creativity starts. Um, I keep it really simple with the chord structure, the song structure. The lyrics are creative, sure. But they sort of just come out of me. And then when I get into the studio is when I really start to have fun, and that's when I sort of create those worlds. Yeah. So I love being in the studio. Actually, it's probably my favorite part.
Your earlier singles like Farouk Nagdia and Blue Cotton have distinct vibes. How do you decide on a sonic direction for each release?
Mm, I think I try to service the song. Um, I've not really been super conscious about sonics, and like I said, I was giving my collaborators a lot of leeway. Um, I wrote Blue Cotton with my ex-boyfriend, who just definitely is a lot more precise and stripped back in his approach. The song is so beautiful and so much about the lyrics and so much about the story that anyway it was quite an intimate experience writing it, and just we felt like we didn't have to add much more. Um, Verrückt was a funny one because that was also written on guitar, and my producer Jules was like, "We should write a German song," and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I have any. I mean, I have this one," and then I played it, and he was like, "Oh my God, that's it. We got to do it," and it turned into like a 12-hour session of just writing like the most ridiculous little synths and drums, and it was just the funniest thing. So it was very, very natural. It was just us really sugar rushed, having a lot of fun. So both of those instances were very natural, spontaneous decisions for the sonic palette. But yeah, I started being a bit more deliberate about it because now that I've got 3 EPs out, I'm obviously thinking album. Not to get anyone's hopes up that it's coming anytime soon, but I'm thinking more in terms of yeah, like if I was gonna release an album, that would be sort of the first mark on my actual discography. Like albums are a lot more historical almost. So I've been thinking, what would I put on that album? What are the influences, and sort of how has my music grown and developed? What do I want my sound to be? Because I've learned a lot through these 3 EPs. and I have a definite direction in mind that I'm sort of fleshing out right now. So any music that I make from this point onward, I think will be a lot more deliberate.
I'm glad you've mentioned album because obviously I wanted to ask like if there is something because obviously 3 EPs is like a lot already, but like doing a bigger project also it's definitely like more expensive and it takes a lot more time and thought because going out with the debut album you really need to I guess put yourself out there like seriously big deal. And um what's your process for deciding which songs make it onto an EP or will be making in an album?
So I've released almost every song I've ever recorded in the studio. I don't have a big budget and I don't really have that much time. But I also have always, that being said, like felt like each of the songs that I've made was worthy to come out. So I've not I wish if I had sort of a record deal and a big budget, I'd be in the studio every single day. I would work for months and months on creating, I don't know, 50 songs and then pick the best ones. But up until now, I've just gone with, yeah, whatever's come out. And they've all come together in a way that I think is quite beautiful. I sometimes think, am I releasing too much? I think there's a sort of strategy that people are doing now where they're teasing songs on TikTok before they decide whether or not they're worthy to come out, whether or not people will receive them. But I think every song will have its moment, whether or not it's going viral on TikTok or whether someone listens to Blue Cotton and is like deeply moved and is like, wow, I have never felt anyone has put into words what I've been through. That's I think more meaningful to me. So yeah, I think there's a justification for every song to exist that's come out thus far.
Oh, honestly, I wish everyone had this mindset because I can't even say or think about so many times where I saw a singer teasing a song and it was really good, but it didn't get attention and they
Mm.
just like decided to like scrap it or not release it. And I'm sure that many people would appreciate it either now or in the future whenever. I just feel like whatever is like meant to happen and whatever you need to listen to it will come to you naturally even with songs. There were so many times where I was going through something and randomly like on Spotify a song came up or I had an artist in my explore page and their song like touched me. Like when you said that the song will have its moment, I do definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any rituals or routines that help you stay creative?
Um, well, as I mentioned, I try to be careful what I consume. Uh, I think it's easier said than done, but I just notice that things come out in my music, and I also try to be present. I can only really take in experiences in a way that touches me enough to wanna to be moved to write about it if I'm present in the moment. Um, and yeah, so that the problem with that is like as an independent artist trying to break, I'm spend a lot of my time on social media. It's extremely time intensive. There's very little time to write because I got to make money as well, and I got to plan all these things. Like I do everything by myself. So yeah, in an ideal world, if I didn't have to make money, I think I would be a lot more deliberate about living screenless and maybe just lie on my bedroom floor a bit more, listening to vinyl or CDs, staring at the ceiling. Uh, yeah.
How's your relationship with social media? How do you kind of consume that? And do you sometimes have the feeling to just, either delete something or take a break because it's too much? And how does it influence you and your music in general?
Mm. it's tricky because on one hand, it's kind of like a living hell. Like I sort of sometimes look at what I do on TikTok and I'm like, Leonard Cohen would be so disappointed in me, you know? I just think it was so different back then, and I feel like any uh sort of allure or mystique or any illusion of coolness that I would have ever had has sort of disappeared from the moment that I started doing lip syncing on TikTok. But it's got to be done, and I think it's also such a gift because I've built my fandom, I've built my cult, and now when I go on social media, not only am I like dreading it because I have to promote my music and beg for people to listen to it, but I also get to respond and read messages from people that listen to my music every day that I've often, met in real life, people whose names I know, whose faces I've seen, who I've hugged, and I cherish that so much. So it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, I freaking hate it, and I'd like to throw my phone in a lake and just lock my laptop up and just, yeah, go pray in the mountains. On the other hand, I would miss all of my sweet eclairs.
No, I definitely can relate in some sort of way. And yeah, but at the same time, I cannot imagine like not connecting to people uh through social media, as you said. So yeah, it's a tricky one, but I love to ask this question to like artists, because sometimes you know hate or even comments or something like that gets into their head, and it's a nice reminder that we all can feel vulnerable at some sort of way, and at the end of the day, sometimes if people are not kind, they are just, screens,
Mhm.
and maybe they want to do something great, but they are too scared to. So I don't want to judge people who hate, but also maybe you try to do something, and then, we can have a conversation. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
a really tricky one.
It's never about you. Like, I don't really get affected by any haters. I think that sort of the first time a video went viral and I got a ton of comments of people being rude, I was just like, okay, well, this didn't kill me. I've gotten 100 comments of people being mean, and I sort of feel indifferent to it. And I approach it now with sort of fearlessness because I know that people are aware of what artists have to do, so nobody really judges it anymore. Like, do I feel like it represents who I am as an artist? Like, probably not. And the moment I get the chance, I will switch it up. If I had a big budget, I definitely would approach things in a different way. But yeah, we all gotta chase clout in this economy.
Um, are there any genres or styles you'd like to explore in the future? Because you've mentioned you do retro pop, but were you ever thinking like maybe let's do something different?
I want to lean into that more. Um, I've been approaching music from a very different angle. I think I've processed a lot of my deep trauma in my last EP. A lot of my limerence has been very obvious in my music. I've sort of started feeling like an actual musician and not just a songwriter or a singer. And I feel like I want to be I want to have a bit more fun with what I make. So, um, yeah, there's like a lot of really exciting songs being recorded as we speak, uh, that I'm super, super excited to start teasing that are in the vein of what I do, but I think much better and much more fun. And yeah, I'm super excited to start promoting them and singing them, and yeah, releasing the songs.
Well, I'm super, super excited to hear them, and I'm sure everyone as well. Um, you've mentioned that you are like scrapping the pages from your journal when you do a performance. What other things you do to connect with your audience during live performances?
I think eye contact is really important. When I first started playing open mics and stuff, I just would play with my eyes closed. Like for the first couple of months, I just literally wouldn't look at my guitar or the audience. Um, and then as you get a bit more comfortable with your playing and your songs and have successful gigs, and you realize that it's just really not that deep. And also realize the beauty of locking eyes with someone because they will remember that. I will remember if my favorite artist looks at me when they sing certain lines. And I've had people come up to me after shows being like, "Oh my God, when you looked at me at that line, it was like made my day." And at the end of the day, I'm a singer because I love performing live. And I love performing live because of the sense of vulnerability that I get and intimacy between me and the audience. Like a performance is a collaborative process. I view the audience as a participant and I want them to feel part of it. I just don't want to feel like, yeah, like I'm self indulging or anything. As much as it feels amazing to be on stage, I write songs so people can listen to them. Otherwise, I'd just be in my bedroom.
Do you have any live performances coming, or are you planning any live performances soon?
Yeah, so I don't know when this is coming out, but I've got a song on March 19th, a performance at Troubadour in London on March 19th, and it's extremely special to me because it's a small venue, but I obviously the whole themes around this EP have been rooted in folk singers. I mentioned Joan Baez, Bob Dylan, and Joni Mitchell in my first song from the EP, and Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan have played there, so it's super meaningful. And I know it'll be a great night.
Yeah, well, I will link it down below with your socials as well. So if anyone wants to see you, they can. It will be linked down below, and I'm super excited for you. Like, I love it so much. I wish I could be there if it wasn't for like exam seasons and stuff. But yeah, and do you have a dream venue to play at in the future?
Yeah, I would love to play at Wembley. I mean, what artist wouldn't? So I definitely I want to feel what it's like to play in an arena. I love an intimate venue, and I'm sure it's a much different feeling, but the energy I get even entering into a sold out stadium, um, it's just yeah, it's so interesting. So I just want to experience that in my lifetime.
It will happen. I'm manifesting very hard. I don't even have to, like, you're very talented. I'm sure it will happen.
Thank you so.
Um, what's the most memorable feedback you've received from a fan or fans in general?
It was after my last show at the George Tavern, my cult gave me a scrapbook, which I went home and read, and it was like so many people had participated from all over the world. It was so beautiful. I sat in my bed and I was just crying because it was so like some of the things that people wrote killed me. And there was someone who wrote that their dad saw I think I think their dad saw the gig and they were like, this reminds me of um like the singers that I would have seen in the 70s. And yeah, she basically she wrote in her scrapbook, she was like, you're like an artist that I would find the vinyl in my parents' attic, and they would tell me all about this singer from the 70s that they would go and watch. And I don't know, I thought that was so beautiful because I that's sort of the world I'm trying to create, um and because I'm so obsessed with that era anyway.
Oh, that was so beautiful. Um, I definitely can see why you were so touched by it because I just love like poetic compliments in some sort of way. So yeah. Well, I want to move to your newest EP. It's called Fruit on a Grave. What inspired the title of this EP?
I think the whole EP is about sort of yeah, like grappling with like the concept of mortality and legacy, and the body and the soul and time passing. Like fruit on a grave to me is such a beautiful image. It's like luscious, ripe fruit um, on the stone cold grave, a sort of symbol of death, and fruit is such a symbol of fertility and nature. And to sort of see that contrast and realizing that fruit, decays and so does youth. And yeah, it's just like, what are we left with at the end of our life? What's the legacy we leave? What's the thing that makes people leave flowers or fruit on our grave? That's sort of where it started. It's a line from Montreal.
Yeah, when I listened to the song, and I was like, oh my god, there's the EP name in the song. So
Yeah.
I really love it when artists
I
do
knew
that.
it. So the moment I wrote that line in the studio, with Dustin who produced it, I said to him, "This is going to be the name of the EP." I just realized.
What was the creative process for this EP in general? Like, obviously when you wrote that, the idea like came up, but when did you choose like these songs are supposed to be there, and also like how are they sorted in the EP?
The Last One I Loved, Eau de Toi, Burgundy Body, and Spirit were all written in the same batch of songs as Wild Horse, I Thought I Could Swim, Long After the Movie Ends, and Candy Shop from the first EP. So they've been floating around for a while, and I realized that they're sort of the songs from that batch that were a lot darker. And specifically with Spirit, where I sing so much about um like my raison d'être, like the reason I'm on this planet, my purpose, and with Montreal, thinking of this desire to leave some sort of a legacy, like whether that's having a child or just creating art. I felt like the other songs fitted in with that. I also tried to keep in mind the sonics. I knew I wanted to end it with Spirit, and then obviously I knew there was supposed to be a Leonard Cohen cover on it. But I tried to create almost like a journey. We're starting with Montreal and we're ending on Spirit before going into the cover, because it's the question is Montreal and the answer is Spirit.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I will re-listen and think of it of this way. And well, my favorite song as of right now, because it's really hard to choose your favorite song when you're like feeling different ways, but it's definitely The Last Man I Loved, because
Mhm.
I was not expecting the song to be as, it was. Like, I thought the idea would be completely different as it was, but I just feel like it's really beautiful. Like, it can come from a perspective of a friendship as well, not just,
Mhm.
like a breakup or something. It's very, very deep. Um, what was the most vulnerable song for you in this EP to even write or produce or even put out?
I think uh, Burgundy Body is quite vulnerable as a spirit. I think laying out your sort of biggest fear and your biggest wishes and dreams leaves you in like an incredibly vulnerable position. Telling a story, is fine. Like we've always done that, but putting your cards on the table like that was quite tricky for me to do. But I'm lucky that I worked with Jules, who's a good friend of mine, on both of those songs. So I was able to, yeah, bring that to the studio and know that it was in good hands and that I was safe.
Can you share the story behind either one of the songs or all of the songs, however you like,
Mm.
on the new EP?
So the last one I loved, I'm gonna go with that one because that's your favorite. But it's three different stories of three different love stories that I've lived through. That each of them at the time felt like this was it, and I loved them, and I didn't think I'd ever love someone else. But then as you go through life, you realize that that happens a lot. I mean, throughout your life, you know, you find someone, you fall in love with them, and you think when you break up, like you will never love like that again, and then you do. So I I I think to me that song is actually it's a hopeful song. Even though you go on a bit of a journey. I mean, we start with the first guy that I loved. Is quite a straightforward romance. The second one, which is a lot more rooted in the past and nostalgia, very connected to Montreal as well. And then the last one, which is very angry and sort of a cautionary tale. And then you end on, yeah, so I loved you, but I know I will love again. Um, yeah, that's where that came from.
But thank you for sharing the story behind this song specifically. Well, I love it so much, and even more. I feel like I will till the rest of my life, to be honest.
Oh,
Um, how does this project differ from your earlier music?
um, I think it's a lot darker. Um, in terms of in terms of the style, I think it's like all of these three EPs were sonically and lyrically things I needed to get off my chest before I could move on to making the stuff that I'm making now, which ultimately will end up being the theme and style of my first album, and I'm sure a lot more down the line will be more the sound that people will connect with me. Um, I think obviously I've got my day ones, including you, clearly, that have heard all of the songs and all of the EPs and will always remember them. But I'm sure that on the line there'll be people who know me because I don't know, a random hit on TikTok or like an album that comes out. And so often EPs are kind of forgotten, and EPs are just part of like the lore or the history of the artist. So yeah, I think this has kind of been a journey. Even though I love every single song I've created, I kind of viewed them as like training for doing what I'm doing now. And I'm just, yeah, I'm like dying for you to hear them.
Well, I'm excited, obviously, but all of your songs and all of the EPs are just so amazing, and I hope people will discover them, and I'm sure that whoever is meant to like discover them will
Mhm.
discover
Yeah.
them, as I said. mm, what message do you hope listeners take away from Fruit on a Grave?
I hope that I mean, feeling anything to me is crazy. Like based on something I've created, that's sort of the highest compliment, and just means that I've done my job and I've been open and honest, and authentic, whatever that means. But the main thing I'm hoping to do as an artist in general is to give people the sort of reminder, maybe, that anything you feel can be beautiful if you make it so. Sometimes we have really dark times, like, Burgundy Body was like a very dark, it's a very dark song, but there's beauty within the violence and, anger of that. And I hope people can see that when I turn something really terrible into something beautiful. I hope they can do the same for themselves.
Do you have a favorite track on the EP? Because we've talked about mine, but you can talk about
Yeah.
yours.
Um, I mean, I love the last one, I love for sure. But I don't know, it's hard. I keep saying Montreal just because that's the latest song that I've done, and I always feel like I improve every song that I write. So I usually, my favorite song ends up being usually the most recent one. Um, so probably Montreal. Oh, I love
And
Spirit, the music
mhm.
video out tonight. Um, and I think when you first hear it, you hear the title, you listen to it. I don't know if people really understand what I'm trying to say with it, but when the video comes out, I think you will understand why the song is so meaningful to me.
Oh, I'm excited. Okay, I will link it down as well. When does it come out?
At 6 p.m. tonight.
Okay, I am excited. So this will be out tomorrow. So it will be
Amazing.
one day. Yeah, so yesterday it came out and you can watch it right now and you should. I'm very excited. I will be seated definitely. Um and why does Montreal stand out to you like specifically? Because you've mentioned that the last song you wrote will be your favorite, but it needs to be favorite like for a reason as well.
Yeah, I think I really crafted that song. So I I think Montreal was probably the first time that I felt like I went into the studio with the mentality of I know what song I want to write. I know what I want it to sound like. I know what I want to write about. It wasn't like the song didn't exist yet in my head. I only had a chorus for it. But I sort of was quite determined to get it right. I wasn't gonna let the fun of the session or the other ideas or anything interfere with the vision that I had. And Dustin, who I made it with, was so open to everything that I had to say and listened to all of my references. And I think, yeah, we made something that we both worked really hard, especially on the chords. So more than half of the session was us sitting in his garden with a guitar, trying to get the chords exactly right, trying to get the melodies exactly right. So I think a lot of craftsmanship went into that song, which is something quite, I don't know, new to me because I write with the same kind of chords. I'm a lyric girl, so it was really nice to feel like, yeah, like I could work ideas further. I didn't just have to go with the first draft.
Oh, I love it. Well, I will release I actually, whenever I like s- stop recording and I edit it or like I upload it, try to upload it, I listen to either like the EP or the whole discography, whatever, the new EP just came out or whatever we talked about or whatever songs we talked about, and I go back to them and they just have like a whole different meaning to me. So I love that I can do something like that for other, fans
Mhm.
or of the artist or new artists that want to become an artist, but also for myself because I can listen to songs from a whole different perspective. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Are there any specific artists or albums or movies or visuals that inspired this new project?
Yes, actually. So in general, I mean, there was a lot of specifically for Eau de Toi and Spirit. I think we listened to a lot of The New Abnormal by The Strokes. So the Strokes were kind of all over those songs, and it was because at the time I was obsessed with them, and that's all I listened to that whole summer. I think they were my top artists that that year. So, I was listening to a lot of the Strokes. Um, Serge Gainsbourg is like a huge inspiration to me, and my producer Jules is French, so he grew up listening to him as well. So Serge Gainsbourg is like actually probably one of my biggest influences in terms of like what I love sonically. Um, Twin Peaks was like heavily inspirational to us in The Last Man I Loved. Um, and yeah, we listened to a lot of that theme song and just generally the soundtrack of that, which is such a masterpiece. And then Leonard Cohen and Nancy Sinatra actually for Montreal. Um, I mean, you can hear in other songs because I love Nancy, but uh, my main inspirations, that influences that I sort of, yeah, like the references I gave for Montreal were mainly all Nancy. So yeah, those were the artists.
I also want to talk about the cover art because I love it so much. I also love the 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 text in the heart that says "I'll never die if you never
Mhm.
forget." I just love it so much because I don't think many people like do that.
Mhm.
And I also love the color and everything. So, what was the inspiration for that? How was this created? What was your vision for this?
Oh my god, I'm so happy you asked because this is my favorite cover art I've ever had. And the best part is that I made it myself. Um, and I mean, Wild Horse was done by an incredible artist called Zeb Xavier, and it wasn't cheap because I love him as an artist, and he was a friend, so he helped me out. But I was kind of expecting to pay similar amounts to make this cover art because it's been something that I had in my mind for my first album. It's something I've had in my mind since I released Wild Horse, which I think Wild Horse, the cover is very similar. It's like an old movie, and that was the inspiration. So for Wild Horse, it was Gone with the Wind. For Fruit on a Grave, it was like any Rita Hayworth movie, um, and movies from that era. Originally, I wanted this photo to be the cover art for Long After the Movie Ends because obviously it's like an old movie poster um, style. And I took these photos for this EP, and I realized that yeah, like they were pretty perfect um, in terms of the fonts and everything. I just played around with it. I'm extremely proud of it. I love pinup girls as well, and I think uh, yeah, I hope that in the future I can uh, lean into that a bit more, the old movies style and like yeah, the 50s.
I love it so much. Honestly, I love how creative it is and the fact that you did it yourself. Hello, like I love the font as well. Love it so much. And also I
Oh,
love the photos that you posted on your Instagram, like
mhm.
the outtakes. Can you maybe share something about them as well?
The photos?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was my first big shooting. Like a photo shoot. Um, we so I usually work with my friends for photos, and I love it. I love this sort of effortless film style just in general. But I just felt like I mean a lot of the photos that have come out have been taken by yeah, like my best friends uh and just sort of spontaneously. And I felt like I wanted to invest in like yeah, getting a studio and getting a photographer in for this round uh of songs because I just had such a strong vision for it. And I think ideas are so volatile. They will fly to you and tap you on the shoulder and be like, "Hey, you should do this." And then if you don't do it, someone else will do it. And I think it's I think there's a lot of room for inspiration. I think just because someone else is doing it doesn't necessarily mean you can't, but I just think I wanted to hold on to that because it just felt like it made so much sense to me. It was so clear in my mind. Like sometimes you just have an idea and it's all laid out in front of you and you just need to go for it. So I really feel like I found my visual identity this year. And it's worth every penny.
I love the outfit as well. And
Thank
I love the
you.
whole idea and
Yeah,
the
it's
hair.
surprisingly, I mean the photos were taken by Moja. I've tagged him in all the photos, but um the the outfit, so it was just him and I. Like I styled myself, I did my hair, I did my makeup. It was like me and him in the studio, him doing the lights.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if if someone like styled you or you like did it yourself because I just love it so much. I love the visual effect and everything. So thank you for like saying that you did it yourself and it's
Mm,
perfect. It's honestly perfect. I can't wait for your album. Like, hello.
God, me neither. I've got so many ideas.
What's the biggest challenge you faced while creating this EP?
I think trying to get it out was a long process. I think the universe kind of works in weird ways. And even though it sometimes feels like you're battling time and resources, I think there's a reason for everything. Like these songs weren't supposed to come out when they were done. Like they were supposed to come out now. Like it all makes sense to me. Like it all tied together so well. Um, and I'm a control freak, and I don't like when I can't fully, uh, yeah, like when I can't fully decide on when to release a song, or like I need to, well, if I have a sign a label deal, like I need to make sure that I'm never going to be in a situation where I can't release music for a year or two. Oh my God, I have to constantly be putting out music. And so I decided, because the EP wasn't really done, or I didn't feel like ready to release it, it didn't feel like the right time. Um, I still released music. Like it was mainly done after long after the movie ends came out. And I toyed with the idea of releasing it that same year. But then I started working on White Death, and that just happened. So it all makes sense to me now. I feel like I've come full circle with the whole project. So I've learned a lot throughout it, mainly patience and to trust timing. Timing's quite a potent thing, and trying to fight against it is like a waste of energy.
And everyone should listen to it. I feel like after this hour conversation, I would be convinced, and I feel like everyone will be as well. So you should listen to it if you haven't yet,
Please do.
because you're missing out. I love it so much. And listen to
Send
the
it to all
others.
your friends.
Yeah, save it everywhere. It's out everywhere. Send it to your friends. And
Your
I'm so
ex.
excited for what you're gonna do next.
Thank you.
And the last thing I ask, it's not really like a question, it's more of like your space to share a message to all of the other aspiring artists, like maybe something that helped you, anything that can help them. This is your space to do so for them.
You know your music best, and you know exactly what it's supposed to sound like. You know what it should look like. You know yourself and your feelings and your lyrics, and don't let anyone else interfere with that. If you have a vision and you come into a big studio with big producers, and they're like, I don't know about this, but you're so sure of yourself. Like, obviously, be open to their ideas, but like, take agency and don't feel like you don't belong. Don't feel like an imposter. Like, you're there for a reason. You're on stage for a reason. You're singing these songs, and because you wrote them, they're great because they come from you. They're real, and nobody else needs to assign value to them for them to have value. They have value because you've created something, and make sure you own it. Make sure you own your music. Make sure you know where it's floating around in the internet. Make sure you know the money it's brought in. Make sure you know the business side of things. Like, make sure that you own your experiences and your songs, and don't let people, especially men, like take ownership over something that you've experienced and that you've created.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. And I'm sure everyone who is starting their music career or wants to start their music career and are too scared, this was a nice thing to hear. So thank you for this and for spending time with me. It's above an hour, which I don't even feel like it was, because it was such a fulfilling conversation. Listen to The Fruit on a Grave, and thank you so much again for being here. And I can't wait for what you're gonna do next.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor and a luxury to be able to expand on what I've created. So thank you for giving me that space. And thank you for what you do, especially for small artists. It means a lot to us.
Thank you so much. I love doing this so much. And I'm happy that we can create a space for everyone and their creativity and music. So thank you again. And we will talk soon.
Talk soon.